The Toyota Yaris is one of the most popular small cars. They've sold nearly 10 million of them worldwide. So with the rise of larger SUVs and crossovers becoming so popular, it made sense to make the Yaris into a crossover. And that is exactly what this is. This is the Toyota Yaris Cross, and it's not the first time that it's actually featured on the channel. I filmed this car when it was first released around 2 years ago in a very fetching gold colour. This colour is brand new for this facelift, and this is urban khaki. And as well as a new colour, it now comes with a slightly more powerful engine and also some interior and infotainment upgrades. And in today's video, I'm going to tell you all the changes for the next generation Toyota Yaris Cross, and also everything you need to know about this small crossover. So if that sounds good, then please keep watching. And if you like new car reviews and car content, you're in the right place. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. So let's begin by talking about the styling of the Toyota Yaris Cross. I think this is going to divide opinions. I love this colour. Many manufacturers are using this colour now, and I really think it looks great. But the styling for me, it's not perfect. I love the Yaris. I think it's such a good looking small car, and I just think this misses the mark. It looks a little bit bug-eyed. I feel like it could be a design that only an owner could love. But let me know, what do you think of the Toyota Yaris Cross down below? In my opinion, I far prefer the CHR. And a couple of people have asked me, Tish, why would you buy a Yaris Cross over the CHR? I don't really know the answer to that question, not yet anyway, but this car goes back tomorrow and the CHR arrives, and I'm going to find out which of these cars I prefer. So if you want to see that video, then make sure you're subscribed, because that's going to come in the next couple of weeks. But don't get me wrong, I don't dislike everything about this car. I really like the rugged styling. You've got a slightly darkened grey plastic bumper at the bottom, and you've got those claddings along the door which give it that rugged feel. Now this car is available as a four-wheel drive, but don't think you'll be taking it across fields, because it's not exactly the most practical. But that four-wheel drive is going to help you cope with different terrains and also different weather conditions, and just make sure that you're a little bit more confident in your car with the four-wheel drive. Things I do like as well, I love the contrasting roof and door mirrors. This is one of the higher spec models, and I think it pays to get those nice dynamic elements.
There's a few specifications to pick from, starting from Icon, Design, XL, GR Sport and a Premier Edition. The entry-level Icon gets plenty of standard specification, including automatic lights, automatic rain-sensing wipers and keyless entry, but it does get a slightly smaller screen, and in my opinion it makes sense to step up to the design. You get a larger screen and you also get LED front projector headlights. The rear seats also fold in 3 places, so it makes sense to fork out a bit to step up to the design. The XL gets a fancy kick boot, the GR Sport concentrates on sportier styling, and lastly, the Premier Edition, which is the one that I'm showcasing, adds some nice bits like a head-up display and a JBL sound system.
One of the most notable changes for this latest generation car is the addition of a new engine in the lineup. So, sitting alongside the existing 114 brake horsepower engine is now a new 128 brake horsepower version. This version is 12% more powerful, and it will do the 0 to 60 2-hour sprint in a more respectable, although still pretty mild, 10.7 seconds. Toyota also claim that despite this engine being more powerful, it's no less efficient than the 114 brake horsepower version that it sits alongside. Of course, all versions of this car are automatic because they're strong hybrids, and that means that for very short distances they can travel in all electric alone, and that means whether you go for either version of the engine, they're very economical. I mean, let's face it, that's what this engine and this car is all about. It's set up for economy. If you want a car which is powerful or exciting to drive, then you might be a little bit disappointed with the Yaris Cross. But if you want a car which is very efficient, then it absolutely can do that. In fact, it can get mile per gallon figures of between 50 to 70 miles per gallon, so really very efficient. At times, the engine does feel slightly not powerful enough for the size of SUV of this car, because at the end of the day, this shares the same engine as the little Toyota Yaris. So to have a slightly larger car setup, it does sometimes feel like it needs a little bit more power. And when I first drove this car a couple of years ago, one of the first things I noticed was its tendency to be quite noisy, especially when you quickly demanded power out of it. And it definitely is still noisy today, although Toyota say that they have put some things in place to try and combat this noise. And they've done it in a couple of ways. They've used soundproofing around the engine to reduce the sound that obviously emits from the engine, and they've also improved the glass at the front windows and also the windscreen to keep out a little bit more of that road noise and engine noise. It does feel slightly quieter than the car that it replaces, but it can still be quite noisy, and it definitely does feel noisier than the Lexus LBX that I've recently driven. Lexus claimed that they made loads of changes to try and make the engine as quiet as possible, and driving this today I realised that they definitely have achieved that. It certainly doesn't take away from the enjoyment of driving this car, and at the end of the day, that's what you pay the premium for in the Lexus. It will probably come as no surprise when I tell you that the Yaris Cross isn't really the most exciting and engaging car to drive. The steering is nice and light, and really it's all set up for city driving, economy driving, and also just being really easy to drive. This car is so easy to manoeuvre, it's really easy to park, it's got a nice small turning circle, but when it comes to enjoyment, it does lack in that slightly. The steering is a little bit sloppy in places, and you can tell that the added height that it has over the Yaris means that it rolls a little bit in the corners. But as I mentioned, these probably aren't things that particularly surprise you. The Yaris Cross has received similar updates to the regular Yaris, and that means a new, larger infotainment system. This is the same infotainment system that you'll find in cars like the new CHR, as well as many other Toyota and Lexus products. It's very simple to use and very intuitively laid out. However, my only issue with this is it can be a little bit boring. In fact, the only bright part of this screen is when you use your Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and at that point it's so clear and it looks so lovely. So it's so disappointing that they've used such simple graphics on their own part of the touchscreen. What I do like, however, is this new digital instrument cluster, and I love that as you press your drive mode, this changes to different settings across the whole screen. It really looks very premium. That's one of my favourite things. In terms of layout, it's very good inside of here. It's not the most driver focused, but it's mostly set out for family life. So you have lots and lots of space between you and your passenger. There's a little bit of tiny storage inside the armrest, which will just about fit a mobile phone. 2 cup holders and also some storage up front, or in higher specification models that changes to your wireless charging. You still have physical climate control dials, so still really easy to use, and it's still packed with equipment, especially this top spec model, which is one of the limited edition models. It comes with everything, including head-up display, wireless charging, and loads of safety tech. Now let's talk about the latest safety equipment, because like many models, this Yaris Cross has all of the latest safety tech, including anti-collision warning, lane assist, blind spot sensors. This has got rear cross traffic alert. It even checks for people when you open the doors to make sure you're not going to knock anyone off of their bike. So loads of safety systems, and that's all the good stuff. But sometimes these safety systems can be a tad intrusive, and that's certainly the case when it comes to the Toyota. If you go slightly over the speed limit, it's going to let you know about it. But the really irritating thing with this car compared to some other models that I've driven recently from, say, for instance, Mazda, is that it's really difficult to turn them off in the Yaris Cross. You have to go through quite a few settings on the steering wheel to be able to find the setting to turn off that traffic sign recognition, and that's the thing. I quite like traffic sign recognition. I like to see how fast I'm going, but I don't like it to bleep at me every time I slightly go over the speed limit. And this is the disappointing thing, because to stop it from bleeping at you, you have to turn off all the traffic sign recognition, and then you don't really know the speed that you should be going, and that's the whole point of that system in the first place. Things have just gotten a little bit ridiculous when it comes to safety, and I know they're in place to keep us safe, but I do think we should have the easy option to be able to turn them off. Now, many manufacturers have gone down the lines of having one single button which is set up to your settings, press that, and then that changes it all at once, and I think that's something that Toyota are going to have to look at doing in the future. The rear seats have some good points and some bad points. I'll start with the slight negatives. It does feel a little bit dark back here because of these rear tinted windows, and the windows sit up quite high as well. So for children in the back, it might not always be the most pleasant place to sit. But there's plenty of legroom and a decent amount of headroom, but possibly the third seat passenger might feel just a little bit squashed. I'm also disappointed with the lack of rear charging in the back here. I've just tested one of the smallest and one of the most affordable new cars on sale, the Kia Picanto, and even that has rear seat charging. It does, however, get a little bit of storage in the doors to put a bottle, and what I am impressed about is the fact that you can drop down this centre seat and then you have through loading and 2 cup holders, which is pretty rare in this class of car. The one thing it would have been really nice to see, however, in this Toyota Yaris Cross would be to have a sliding rear bench, so it was as competitive as some of its rivals. Around the back is definitely where I see more of an influence of the Yaris, because you've got this almost like boot spoiler shelf type design, which is very similar to on the Yaris. Now, this may appear like a light bar, but it's not. You've got the rear tail lights, and then you've got a reflector in the middle, so it doesn't completely light up, but I've always quite liked this design. You've got a small spoiler up top, and you've also got a rear windscreen wiper, which you don't get in the Toyota CHR because that has more of a raked window. This has a bit more of a boxy design. It also still has that slightly rugged element with this plastic bumper at the bottom. Now, inside the boot of the Toyota Yaris Cross, you'll find 100 litres more than the standard Yaris, and that brings it up to just under 400 litres. It's nice and practical, a really nice load height, and also inside you've got 12-volt charging, you've also got tether hooks too, but other elements inside this boot are a little bit strange. Now, this boot floor, it's actually divided into 2, and I can't quite work out when this would be practical. I understand it's so that you can customise your boot storage, but I just think it feels a little bit cheap. I'd rather have a high quality boot floor instead. You also get a slightly cheap, flexible parcel shelf, although I know this is really practical because you can store it easier, and also when you've got items in the boot which come up a bit higher, it's not going to knock the parcel shelf off, so that's a bonus. But the boot floor, I'm a little bit baffled by. When it comes to choosing a sensible family crossover, the Toyota Yaris Cross is a solid choice. It's competitively priced, it's cheap to run, you get tons of equipment including some really important safety technology, and also you get that 10-year service activated Toyota warranty. There's just one issue. That's what it looks like. But as I said, maybe that's just my personal opinion. But let me know, have you opted for the Toyota Yaris Cross? Are you happy with your decision, or are you thinking of buying one? Let me know in the comments down below. I really hope you have enjoyed the video. If you have, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up. And if you want to see more, you know what to do. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Until next time, guys, see you later.